Thanks for the warm welcome. Challenges when launching in a new market are multifold. Spotify is a global brand, global product. So before we go into a new market, we need to listen and learn. And then it starts with hyperlocalization. That's not only the product translated into Arabic, make sure integration in 2,500 different hardware and software products from speakers, TVs, PlayStation, to name a few, is critical. It's the licensing, making sure artists and podcasters can make money and being able to monetize and make a living of their art. And furthermore, it's localizing the propositions as well, right? Price point in a market that works well, adjusting the product. There's a light product that we launched, which is much lighter than the original Spotify app, but still delivers more than 90% of the same user experience. As different plans, family plan, student plan, really to cater for it. But ultimately, and that's what I discussed with a lot of people here, is about talent. So having really the right people on board for a very complex and fast-moving, frequently changing mission. And in our team, we have more than 20 different nationalities, and it's this human symbiosis of really great people, experts in the field in music and in podcasting, to work with the machine learning that we have, the technology that we have, in order to be always ahead of the game. Lastly, it's the partnerships, right, with creators and artists that come and embrace Spotify, not just by the day, but by the minute, and use it as their number one music platform.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of creators, I want to move to Stefano, and as Podio is mainly working with creators and podcasters. So how is Podio empowering the creators and the podcast economy?
Yeah, I mean, ever since day one, the mission was always to give a platform to really amplify the voices of people and really give the opportunity for ears all over the world to really reach them. How do you build on that? How do you execute? It's by building really a robust infrastructure. An infrastructure that can really enable and empower all stakeholders of the podcaster economy, not only creators, but creators, listeners, distributors, and advertisers. And essentially, we've noticed accumulated over the past 10 years, you had only 1,000 podcasters, right? We launched a tool, creator tool, earlier this year, and we onboarded tens of thousands of creators because we were able to sort of crack that ability to enable and to empower, right? We noticed that creators and podcasters were using on average 4 to 5 different tools to actually create a podcast. So one to record, another to edit, another to host, another to distribute, and you name it. And that process was actually very fragmented. This is why you have less than 2 million podcasters out of 50 million creators globally that are actually podcasters. So actually, it's less than 1.5% of the content that's created daily. So how do you shift these dynamics? It's by actually really listening to what creators need, simplifying and demystifying the process of creation, and really enabling and solving problems across the entire value chain. Because once you verticalize your product, especially in markets that have low supply and demand, you can't really come in with one product. You need to come in with a suite of products that are actually all complementary and create continuous feedback loops for you to continuously feed this entire ecosystem.
And you think this will change the ratio of 2 to 50 million creators? I think it's a very big difference between 2 and 50. What you're doing will increase the number of the podcasters, or?
I mean, yeah, that's the goal, right? That's the aim. Everything that we do, everything that we create, all the products that we launch, get us one step closer to that mission. And I think, the team is doing a fantastic job by enabling and listening to all stakeholders. And I think, taking Clubhouse, for example, right? What Clubhouse showed us was really the dire need and desire to actually get into audio for people to tell their stories, to talk about their stories, their opinions, share their thoughts with the world. But they did a lot of mistakes along the way. But something that they actually proved was that they did a decent job in simplifying the process to get into social audio, but there was no content moderation. Which actually got them into a lot of hate speech and discrimination. On the demand side, the algorithm was broken. There was a broken notification system. So it was pretty much a mess. And it also sort of reflects into the hyped products that you see out of the world, which is why I really stress on the fact that you need to have strong fundamentals, a robust infrastructure to continuously deliver on your mission, essentially.
Yeah, I will come to Clubhouse later because I really wanted to ask you about it. But
I have loads of questions about that as well.
Yeah,
but I'm not the moderator. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was very trendy. Then it went down. Okay,
yeah,
we will come to it later. So, Amy, I want to ask you about how do you see the entertainment and the media industry evolving in the coming years? I know you have a lot of
oh my gosh,
insights.
I have a lot to say about the future of media.
It's a 1 hour question.
Okay. So this will be a 20-minute answer, and then we'll get back to Clubhouse. So I get this question asked a lot, especially these days, right? When we're talking about all of these new emerging technologies, which I know you're very plugged into. And we're all sat here on this panel and we're supposed experts in the media space. And I'm sure you guys get this question a lot as well, right? What is the future of media going to look like? And I think here we really need to differentiate, and apologies for using an old school term, but we really need to start to differentiate between the medium and the message, right? Because what happens is when you talk about the future of media, you start talking about these emerging technologies. So yes, we know we're talking about blockchain and digital ownership, and what is that going to mean for the monetization and ownership of our content? Truly, what does it mean for the ownership of our content? We know we're going to talk about metaverse and the possibility of truly immersive media experiences when it comes to the metaverse. We are talking about the potential of decentralized social networks, which I know is something that you're very focused on. Or we're talking about the potential of biotech and what will it mean when there's a kind of seamless transition between our real world identities and our digital identities. But I think none of us actually know where any of these technologies are going to land. None of us actually know what those use cases are really going to end up looking like. And anyone who tells you otherwise, I just think is bullshitting. And let's take it back to the beginning. If you go back to, let's go back to Web 1, right? And you had all of these people in these tech geniuses in their garages, in their dark garages, and they were the only people at the time who had the ability to put information out onto the web. And the rest of us, back then, were just consumers of the content. We could only read the content. And at the time, they would start talking about this future super information highway, this world of communication which we would all be part of, right? But no one at the time, no one could have predicted or fathomed of a world when that super information highway would be underpinned by social media. No one imagined of that, right? No one thought that we would have a world, which is incredible, where every single one of us has a voice, and a world in which we dismantled the traditional gatekeepers that had controlled our media for so many years. And no one could have imagined of a world when we have all of this incredible power, and each one has a voice that we choose as our overlord, Kim Kardashian. No one could have imagined, right? That's what we decided to do with that power. We made Kim Kardashian our fucking leader. Meanwhile, no one could have predicted that possibly one of the greatest dictators of all time would be some nerdy white man in Silicon Valley puppet mastering the technology, him and other nerdy white men, puppet mastering the technologies that quite literally shape the way that we view the world. And no one could have imagined a world where Beyonce and a viral TikTok dance ends up having more emotional resonance and visibility than a woman-led revolution in Iran. So what we need to be talking about when we talk about the future of media is not what the technologies are. The technologies will lead us where we want. But right now, we are not media. You are media. We are all media. You're all sitting on your phones right now, participating in the media ecosystem. As businesses, as individuals, as entrepreneurs. What we need right now, when we discuss the future of media, for a collective discussion about how we want our digital identities to look in the future. How we can learn from the mistakes that we made. We need to be thinking about misinformation and disenfranchisement. And we need to be thinking about what we're going to teach our kids about being responsible and accountable members of our media ecosystems, because media is the very way that we are shaping our identities and the way that we shape the world. And that is what we need to think about when it comes to the future of media. I don't need to talk again on this panel.
I agree with you. I mean, if someone knows what will happen in the future, I think he will basically like rule the world. And yeah. And speaking of the future, Sharman, I want to ask you about Verse. I mean, I was always curious about products like the one you made. It's very risky, very challenging. You are competing with giants. So, yeah, how can you manage these challenges?
First of all, thanks for having me here. I get this question a lot, and the only answer is because it's fun. If for me, I'm a kind of entrepreneur who doesn't work for money. I couldn't care less about it. So what I care about is if something is challenging me, something is making my blood boil, something is making me wake up in the morning, go to work, something's making me sleep in the office. So I don't care who's there on the other side of the room, because at the end of the day, I know we will be there. And I have an amazing team behind me, and the tech that we are doing, anything and everything that you can think of today, all the techs, we already have it. So there you go.
Interesting. So I wanted to ask you, as a huge audio streaming platform, are you working on empowering the new music creators, or like creating what I would like to call the new Spotifyers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are a platform like you, and it's our without creators we're nothing. And these lines are getting more blurry between just listeners. They're also becoming creators. I think we want to inspire many millions of people to go into the arts of music, but also in podcasting. So what we do is in the MENA region, for example, we've done more than 100 artist masterclasses for creators to learn and understand the industry, to tear down boundaries, and to get really into it. On top of that, we are running programs. One is, for example, called Equal, for women creators and women artists to be amplified and supported across the world. And Spotify and there's other programs like Radar. Another one is Fresh Finds, with a mentoring program for independent, just starting artists, for several weeks, where they can get individual masterclasses and tutoring and so on. And here Spotify can help. We have about 456 million active users across the world. Artists are so fandom doesn't know any borders. And the artists that we work with in Egypt, in the MENA region, really realize that. So 66% of the discovery is actually happening outside of the MENA region for artists from the region. Top countries are US, Canada, Turkey, Germany, I forgot one, for the discovery and for the listening, actually, of music from the MENA region. And then we have the fans. It's quite interesting. Egyptians, they're actually sharing the music that's coming from Egypt like crazy to a global audience on all the social media platforms. They're over-indexing by 2,700% versus other listeners on Spotify when it comes to sharing. And that helps artists to get to new audiences, to a world stage. And we amplify this through our global platform.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing such numbers. I think it's really interesting to know that numbers. So, okay, moving to you, Stefano. I think podcast is a kind of the new radio, or just a different product from the radio. How can you differentiate between the podcast and the radio? And are they affecting each other, or someone is raising, someone is going down?
Yeah, I think great question. I think we need to go back to fundamentals, right, and to basics. Something that radio was able to do that podcast isn't doing yet is essentially hyperlocality and niche audiences and communities, right? If you go back to the sort of the fundamentals of the technology or legacy infrastructure that radio has, it's essentially frequencies. And what these frequencies have are limited reach, right? Which is why you have local radio stations that air local news, local morning and afternoon shows, right? And it's all about that. This is why you have that stickiness toward the radio. And sure, set aside the fact that it's super simple to just get in the car and click a button and access that content. But I think until we crack that thing, you're not going to see, I mean, we're already seeing that because we're building this hyperlocality and democratization through our tools. But until you get there, this is when you see podcasting going mainstream. And don't forget that you have last year, right, $38 billion that were spent on radio ads globally, as opposed to $2 billion on podcasts. So it's just a matter of timing before that shifts dynamics, and when you start seeing these radio ads and budgets that going into radio ads to start pouring into podcasts, which is essentially the on-demand world.
Okay. Amy, I see you're like very keen on the present more than the future. You need to like talk more about what's actually happening now. So I think one of the main things that are happening now is the global financial crisis. How this can affect the we're all affected by that.
Screwed. Who's not affected by the global financial crisis? Put your hands up. What's the question?
You?
Oh, you're not. Amazing. Do you have money? Are you investing? Okay, amazing. Well, let's speak afterwards. Great.
No, I think we can speak now. It's more important.
We can?
Yeah.
Cool. What does your dad do? Okay, I'm now even more interested. When you can't tell, you know there's a lot of money involved.
Can I be honest? I think there are going to be people who are more affected in the world and less affected. So I live in the GCC, and I think they're going to be less affected as somewhere here.
Yeah.
So I just figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The global financial crisis sucks, but what's the question?
Like as someone
my
who's
statement.
working in the media industry, how did this affect
the media
you?
industry. Okay, good question. How is the advertising industry affected by the global financial crisis? I mean, obviously, with most companies. So, for those who don't know, Mo4, which is the company I co-founded, is partly a media company. We have 10 of the leading lifestyle publications in Egypt and across the region, and it is also a digital and creative advertising agency. What is the first budget that goes when companies face a crisis? Stupidly and ironically, it's the marketing budget. But I think what the global and events right after? Who's in events here? Okay, sorry. But I think what's interesting about what happened is that I think it catalyzed what was going to happen with the advertising industry anyway. I think agencies are dead. I think we're all living on borrowed time. I think independent content creators are doing a much better job than we do as agencies, not as my agency, obviously, but just like as most agencies. And I think all it's doing, and I think it's a wonderful thing, I think it is catalyzing a process that was overdue. I think it is forcing companies to look internally and make the right decision about moving their storytelling in-house. You own the platforms. Why are you outsourcing the content creators? And every 12-year-old with a phone can probably do it better than some overpaid creative director at some global agency. So that's number one. Number two, for us personally, we were very lucky that we are very lucky that we are a very diverse company. And I believe that although agencies might be struggling, I think people are always going to need a mouthpiece. People are always going to need media. People are always going, even if I'm creating my own content as a brand, as an entrepreneur, I need somewhere to take that content and show it to the world. And so that's what we've really kind of doubled down on as a company is come to me, I have the voice, I will make you reach millions of people, and I will charge you for it.
Thank you. So Shadman, Amy was talking about that like the new agencies are content creators, or content creators are the new agencies. And you work closely with content creators. You're trying to empower them in a different model in Verse. How does Verse impact the creators' economy?
So first of all, Verse is actually a very, very aggressive mission and vision-driven company. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make content creators' lives easier and more importantly transparent. So if you see, like, these days, a hype term is content creator economy, content creator economy. Everyone is talking about it, but no one is doing anything about it. So once we saw that problem, and once we saw, like, when we're, like, building the platform, and the main driver of our platform are the content creators, we thought that, like, we have to do something. And that's when, like, we came up with our content creator economy. We tried to, like, make everything more transparent, all the transactions between, like, them to companies, them to different content creators, them to us. It always have to be super transparent, and the experience has to be, like, seamless. Because at the end of the day, content creators are actually, like, driving media. So when they're, like, driving our platform and we're not taking care of them properly, they're gonna go to Facebook or TikTok, and I don't want that. So there you go.
Sorry, but we are running out of time. I wanted to ask you a lot of more questions, but now I have, like, one generic question. I want every one of you to answer it about the metaverse and the evolving of some industries in the Middle East, in the metaverse. Sorry, not in the Middle East. So I want to ask you, like, it's a 30 seconds question. How do you see, like, the music industry evolving in the metaverse? You have any expectations? Anything you can?
All right, who's in the metaverse? All right, a few. You can't imagine it unless you imagine it. At Spotify, we try to, like, build more fandom for artists and creators across the world, right? So that they can reach and monetize. Right? We paid out about $7 billion in 2021 to rights holders, to artists. And so the fandom, the stickiness around fandom, the authenticity about the relationship between an artist and a fan is super important. Right? And they're going to use a creative artist today uses any media platform to build this really meaningful relationship. But it's not one way, exactly as you said. It's also fans are craving to do it from there and reach the fans in all different times of ways. And there, the metaverse comes really into play. And we started to experiment. We went onto Roblox, created different environments for genres. There's hip hop. We built a hip hop world there, and I signed up. And my daughter, she's 5. She's not having a computer or smartphone yet, but I got her help and used her imagination to do it in the metaverse. We jumped around. And then we took some merchandise from artists that we at Spotify have created there. I had to change my hair to pink. I took a bright yellow sound blaster that was branded Spotify and run around in the metaverse. So what you do there, you give artists and creators a new platform, a new world that's being created there in order to build more meaningful connections. And I think this is the future. And then brands will go into that as well. Can't tell you the pace. None of us can predict the future.
Yeah, I think, metaverse we're still at the very early stages of it. I think everyone's, still building it. It's still very early days, but something that proved to be right is the technology behind it, right? That enabling or the ability to digitize this, your assets, right? And shift that ownership from your major platforms to more of a peer-to-peer model or decentralized model. And this is the real value, in my opinion, that I see is that ability to create a new revenue streams for creators, right? NFTs are just, in my opinion, just an additional revenue streams for creators. I think it's just very early days, but I think just time will tell. Yeah.
Amy, do you see any expectation for the news industry and the metaverse? Yeah. I know it's a very hard question, and
that's a really hard
just
question.
Expectations. Yeah.
I'm really excited about what it means to have experiences that theoretically could be so immersive that perhaps they might jolt us out of the apathy that we feel when we are inundated with so much news. I'm excited about the potential of metaverse to make us feel things when we see stories happening around the world that could potentially impact change in a way that is very difficult in the digital spaces that we live in right now. And I think it's very important just across the board for all entrepreneurs in the room to be thinking about this metaverse space. You said about your 5-year-old daughter. about your 5-year-old daughter, I think it's important to understand that we look at the metaverse and this idea of avatars and this alternate existence as something very alien to us. But these future consumers, these 5-year-olds that are going to become 15-year-olds and 25-year-olds, they understand their digital identities in very different ways. And they don't see it as so far removed from who they are. And it's so important that everyone in the room, and I'm assuming most of you are entrepreneurs, are thinking about your metaverse strategies, because that is where your future consumers are going to be.
Okay, same question, Chadman. Do you have like any expectations for or how the metaverse will increase the content creators economy? How can
Look, metaverse and content creator economies are like two different things, but they're also like intertwined with each other. So that's like that's one point. The second thing is it's very hard to say what's going to happen in the future. I mean, none of us can like predict.
yeah, we can just expect.
However, the way that we see metaverse on how Facebook built it, it's not going to be there. This is not how metaverse is going to be. I can tell you on point blank, it's not. Because people are not going to just sit with their with their headsets and everything and then get excluded from the reality. This is not what we build. This is not what technologists build technology. This is a failed project. But if you want to build actual metaverse, it will have to be something intertwined with your reality. Something that enhances your reality. That's metaverse. And that's what we're building at Verse.
So something that enhancing our reality, not replacing it or not.
You can never replace reality. Reality is one object that you cannot replace. That's why it's called reality. The only thing that you can do is enhance it. Enhance it to a point that it becomes something immersive and it becomes something that we never thought could have existed. It's like we're living in Marvel movie, taking out the risk of we're walking on a street and not a car is gonna hit us, right? Mm-hmm. It has to be something that goes beyond So most importantly, metaverse will become something that will enhance our sensory system.